for them right now. Shift my webcam. Thank you, Marina. Welcome back, Christina. Did you go on holiday?
Yes, thank you. I was on holiday, and a few days I had to do, I say, some issues with my family. Therefore, I couldn't attend the classes. I'm sorry for that. Yes.
You just look more relaxed. That's why I thought you went on holiday.
Thank you. Yeah, a few days holiday. Yes. Thank you so much.
We all need to take holidays and take breaks to get. Sometimes we need to get recharged. Although for me, teaching these classes recharges me.
Oh, okay. On the other hand, sometimes when we do actions for the Dharma, sometimes we think, oh, we have to work the whole day, and we forget to recharge, yes, or to take a pause. So it's good that you remind us. Yes.
I think for me, at least, if I'm not getting recharged when I'm doing the Dharma, it means that I forgot why I'm doing it. I forget my joyful effort. And checking, it's like, what else would I want to be doing? Well, maybe laying on a desert, on a tropical beach. But maybe not, right? Thank you. Yeah. So before we jump into class today, could everybody who is taking this class please put their cameras on? So I assume those who have not put their cameras on are not taking this for credit. Thank you, Andre. So I have a question for you. How many of you have finished all 18 courses? Christina and David and Anna and Rinchin. Well, there is one more step to do after you finish the 18 courses, which is a special thing, and it's called a Maroc. And the Maroc is like a mini Geshe degree. And I would like to offer those of you who have finished your 18 to do a Maroc. And it's not something you got to sweat over, right? We'll have fun depending on how many, we'll have maybe between 3 and 6 questions each from the whole ACI open teachings. You will get to study first, and nobody fails. Just know that nobody fails. When I took the Maroc, now it's 15 years later, and I could probably answer most of the questions, but I don't have a memory like Word or Ben that they just, get it. For me, teaching it, studying it over and over, hearing it is what helps me. So when I took my Maroc, everybody was helping me. And they were like giving me little ideas and suggestions. And so don't worry about it. It's a wonderful thing to do. It's like a mini Geshe degree. So if you would like to do it, I know David would like to do it. And please let me know and we will set a time. I think Tim might join us for it too, because we were talking about it last night and he's never done a Baroque. And maybe we open it up for other people too. And my idea at this point is that each of us would pick, depending on how many there are, a question, 3 questions, and we would ask each other. Right. So we won't do it in debate style. We'll just do it in normal question and answer, Western style education. So think about that. And then there will be a special little recognition and gift for you at the end of your Baroque to remind you of what you have done. So, probably be a couple of months from now, give you time. We're coming into holiday season, at least here in the US. And so anybody who's finished the 18 and who has not done a Baroque, you can let other people know if they would like to do it, to please contact me. Okay?
Thank you for the opportunity and that we have a few months time to prepare for this. Could you spell Baroque that I understand what it is? Could you spell it, Baroque?
Maroke. It's not an English word.
Yeah.
It's not an English word.
Tibetan.
So at the end of your Geshe studies in the monastery, you have an exam. And the whole monastery turns out for the exam. And you have an exam question that you're going to be grilled on. And they do it in debate style. And you have to defend your position and, of course, get to what the real understanding is, the ultimate understanding. So that's what they do in the Geshe degree. And I'll pull up a picture. I'll try and find it tomorrow of Geshe during his Geshe exam, right, in India. And so we're going to do something similar. I haven't looked at the Baroque exam in a while, but there's a lot of questions, and you'll just be questioned on a few of them. So it's like maybe pulling questions out of a hat, which is what we did at my Baroque. Here, I thought we would do it a little bit differently, but maybe I'll change my mind, which is that we would each pick a question to ask the other Baroquer. Unless we have like 100 people or something, which I don't think we will, because then it would just be too long. So let's see how many people sign up. And I was thinking to do it in the new year. I'm just trying to think. How about, and I'll let ACI, well, I let ACI know right now because you have a big presence here. By the end of October, if people can sign up for a Baroque, and then we'll figure out what time it will be. But I don't know the logistics, haven't figured that out of how to sign up, but within our own little Telegram group, we can do that, okay? And we'll have fun. Oh, Natasha's going to organize it. She's our big organizer. Thank you, Natasha. Okie dokie. So, without further ado, let's see if I can get this screen sharing together. And I will try to slow down. No, let's go away. Okay. So we have a lot of slides to do today. And we had a great relief and fun with our Lojong practice. And now today we're going to put on our, I guess I'd say our logic caps again. And this is the last course, ACI 15. And it's a course on what the Buddha really meant. It's a course on wisdom, right? And what the question is, he said this and he said this, and they contradict each other. So what am I supposed to believe? So that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, let's see. So the text we're going to study is called Zhuangne Lekshe Ningpo. Zhuangne means figurative or literal. And as you know, I like to show you the original or an original print of what it looks like. And so here's a block print, a Zhuangne Lekshe Ningpo. What does Zhuangne Lekshe Ningpo mean? It means essence of eloquence. So that's what we call it in English. It's beautifully written. The ideas are extremely important, and it is the essence of those ideas. So, Zhuangne, figurative, literal. Lekshe is well spoken, and Ningpo means like the heart or the essence of something. It was written, by Lama Tsongkhapa, and it's a commentary on 2 sutras taught by Lord Buddha. Those 2 sutras are called Dode Gongdrel, say Dode, Gongdrel. And Dode Gongdrel is the commentary on the true intent of the sutras. Dode Gongdrel is the primary source for the teachings of the mind-only school. So today we're going to be wearing, some part of the time we're going to be wearing mind-only school hat, part of the time we're going to be wearing independent middle way hat, part of the time we're going to be wearing Prasangika middle way hat. So depending on which philosophical school is looking at these sutras depends on what they say is figurative or literal. So sutra here, it means a brief teaching given by the Buddha. It can also mean like a small book, a sutra, but here it means a teaching spoken by Lord Buddha. And this sutra is where Lord Buddha answered a bodhisattva's question about these contradictions. Contradiction where what Lord Buddha said in the first turning of the wheel and what he said in the second turning of the wheel. This bodhisattva's name was Pakpa Lojo Mi, the realized being named never-ending wisdom. So this is the second one, the sutra requested by the realized being or the Arya named never-ending wisdom. And this is the source for the Middle Way School's explanation of when Lord Buddha was speaking literally or figuratively. So there's these different points of view in each of the different philosophical schools. So it's like depending on where you're standing and what your sources are, you perceive it differently. Forced on you by your karma. So what was the Bodhisattva's question? So this Bodhisattva approached Lord Buddha and said, Lord Buddha, in the first turning of the wheel, you taught 7 great subjects, like the 5 heaps, the 4 Arya truths, the 8-fold path, the 18 parts of a human being, the 12 doors of sense. All of these beautiful ways of looking at the world. And you always said that these things existed from their own side, that they had some nature or reality of their own. So this comes up in the 3rd turning of the wheel, the 3rd part of Lord Buddha's life. And it's in the 10th chapter of the Sutra of True Intent. Then he goes on to say, on Vulture's Peak, you started saying that nothing exists from its own side. Nothing has any nature. Nothing has a definition from its own side. The things around you don't exist the way you think they do. I'm confused, he was like, I'm confused. Do I think this way or this way? What did you really mean? What was your true intent? Because we know you are infallible. So please tell me which statement is true. Or do some things exist by definition and some things don't exist by definition? And Lord Buddha, he responds by making fine distinctions about things, explaining that some things do have a nature of their own and some things don't have a nature of their own. Why is this important? For any philosophical system, it is the most important question. When was the founder speaking literally? And when was the founder speaking figuratively. So take, for example, the most famous statement that Lord Buddha said, which it's like, what is he talking about? He says, kill your father and your mother. Is that literal or is it figurative? Would Lord Buddha, who is trying to end all suffering, say that literally? Or is it figurative? What it means is if you're not able to practice well at home with your parents, with your family, go somewhere else. Like go on retreat. That's all it means. So we have to know if something is literal or figurative. So if you don't practice Zhongnei, people would go around killing their parents. And that's one of the 5 immediate bad deeds. So it's this whole beautiful subject of how to figure out what is figurative and what is literal. When did Lord Buddha mean what he said? And when did he not? And who gets to decide? This is extremely important because of corruption. The founders or the prophet's words can be taken away anyway, right, to support whatever kind of behavior they are involved in or we are involved in. There's this person named Benjamin Franklin, who was one of the founding fathers of the United States of America. And, you know, he kept his book, he kept his diary. And in there, he talks about wanting to become a vegetarian. And he was quite a glutton. He was quite a rotund, round person. And he thought, you know, it's much better to become a vegetarian and not kill animals. But he loved to eat. So he's in the United States, one of the founding fathers, and he needs to take a trip back to the old country, back to England. And so they're on a ship and they're off the edge of Newfoundland. And at that time, you know, ships, they didn't have motors, they only had sails. So they depended on the wind. And the wind totally died down. And people didn't know what to do with themselves. You know, they were playing cards probably and just hanging out. So part of their hanging out, they decided, oh, we're just sitting in this one place. Why don't we go fishing? And so everybody around him has their, you know, stick with a string and a hook on it or whatever it was, and they go fishing. And, you know, we're talking a couple of 100 years ago, there were a lot of fish in the ocean at that time. And so people are pulling up fish and then they're making little fires on deck and they start to clean the fish and cook them. And he's like, I'm not going to eat a fish. I'm becoming a vegetarian. But he's getting hungrier and hungrier. They cut open the fish, and he's watching all this, right? And inside the big fish are these little fish. Inside the littler fish are even littler fish. So he begins to think, The big fish eat the little fish. So it's okay that I eat the big fish because I'm an even bigger fish. I think this might be the root of one of our problems for our world at this moment. Thinking that things are there to satisfy us, that we're the biggest fish. I'm just putting that out. That's personal thought. Anyway, he has this thought, and you know what happens to thoughts when we start to think about it, when we want something. He decides it's okay to eat the big fish. So he feasted, and when he was totally thoughtful, he thought about what he had just done. And he realized it was just his desire, what we would call ignorant liking, which caused him to want to eat the big fish. So why do I tell you this story? Because we can use ideas to and bend them any way we want to justify what we want. So it's so easy to take this tendency to take the Dharma and to bend it to our personal desires, to our personal mental afflictions, which we came here with, right? And we bend the rules to fit us. It's like, but that's why we have to study Chang'e. It is important so that we can learn what the Buddha really meant for us to take up and give up in every case. So this subject in the monastery, the perfection of wisdom, the Prajna Paramita, is studied for 12 years. For 4 years, they study middle way philosophy. And in between the study, in between the study of these two subjects, for 6 months every year, they study Chang'e. So in this book, the first half is devoted to the ideas of the mind-only school, and the second half to the middle way school. And Lama Tsongkhapa presents an argument between the mind-only school and the two halves of the middle way school on what the Buddha really meant. So what would they be arguing about that the Buddha said? The biggest thing, the fact that things have no nature of their own, emptiness. Lord Buddha taught emptiness 6 different ways. 5 of them are wrong. Why did Lord Buddha teach 5 wrong views? Who is to say which is the right way? And how do you know? When he taught the mind-only version of emptiness, he criticized the middle way version. Who taught the mind-only version? Who taught the middle way version? He says that when teaching the mind-only way, I was wrong when I taught the middle way version. Now I'm telling you the truth. I was just kidding. That kind of emptiness is crazy. It's nihilistic. It's destructive. And, it's not really that complicated. So he taught it in the mind-only version in a much easier form. The ultimate version is the middle way, the Madhyamika way. It is accepted by the Tantric schools, by the Diamond Way schools. It is the basis of the Diamond Way schools. When Lord Buddha taught the mind-only school, not only did he teach it differently, in the middle of his explanation, he says it was wrong, and I didn't mean it. And later he said the opposite. I did mean it. So this is the primary reason to study Zhangmei. It's to learn the true meaning of emptiness. We gotta know what we're talking about. And Lord Buddha taught it differently in each of the 3 turnings of the wheel. So, what does that tell you about the rules of interpreting Lord Buddha? Can you take his own statements on interpretation to be literal? It gets sticky. When Lord Buddha discusses how to judge what he said or what he didn't say, you can't take him seriously, right? When he set forth his opinion on what he wanted us to take literally and figuratively, he was being figurative. He didn't even mean that. Jason Coppett, in the opening lines of his book, says, you know what? We got a problem here. We are trying to figure out what the Buddha really meant and what he didn't mean. But when he told us what he really meant, he wasn't really meaning it. Now what do? We're stuck. We can't trust what the Buddha said. That's what I really meant. And all the other times, it's not what I meant. Because in the 3rd turning of the wheel, when he was teaching mind only, he contradicted the first turnings of the wheel. So what does it mean to be figurative or literal? There are 3 meanings. The first one is do the words and the intended meaning match each other? So if you're speaking figuratively, the words don't correspond with the ultimate meaning. For example, in the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, Lord Buddha said, all the things around you that you see exist from their own side with their own nature. Then a few years later, up on Vulture's Peak, he said, actually, nothing has any nature of its own. Nothing exists from its own side with any quality of its own. Then a few years later, in the 3rd turning of the wheel, he said something that contradicted both of these earlier statements. Some things exist by definition and some things don't exist by definition. So he must have been speaking figuratively in 2 of these cases. So the first one is expressions. Words can express either the literal intended meaning of the speaker or the figurative meaning. And we have to figure out, do the words correspond to the real meaning? The second one is, does the way an object appears to us and the way it really, I should say, ultimately is, match each other? So the first one is about expressions or words. The second one is we're on the level of reality. If it were literal, the object appears the way it exists. That is ultimate reality. Figurative, the object is lying to you. Deceptive reality. It's appearing in a way that is different from the way it really is. That's what illusion or deceptive reality means. We see things as coming from their own side at us, from a Madhyamika Prasangika point of view. Right? Is that figurative or is that literal? And the third way is our mind. This is referring to 2 states of mind, understanding. So what are those 2 states of mind? One is valid perception. We talked about it a few weekends ago. Sema, pramana, right? Roughly a correct or accurate perception. You know, for example, seeing 5 fingers on your normal hand. It's a valid perception. Valid perceptions are on the level of literal perceptions. And the second one is our approximate understanding, or yichu. This is on the figurative level, meaning that your understanding only roughly matches how things are. In the direct perception of emptiness, perception and reality match. Until that time, everything is figurative. And as we work with thinking about emptiness, we gradually, intellectually approximate emptiness. It's helpful. It gets more and more literal every time we talk about or think about the pen. We get closer to the literal understanding. But we use the approximate to get there. So this is the most important part of this final review course. Lama says it is, Lama Tsongkhapa says it is earth-shaking, that you can't even trust the word of the Buddha when he says, that is what I really meant. because he didn't really mean it. What ground do we have? What can we trust? Remember that course 2 weekends ago, that course called Logic? We can use our own reasoning. So we have this most important Buddhist who ever lived, Lama Tsongkhapa, saying, you don't just trust the Buddha's words, you trust what is logical to you. It has to make sense to you. What makes sense to a normal person like you and me is more important than what an enlightened being says he means. It's pretty heavy, right? This is about not following someone just with blind faith. Oh, it was Lord Buddha and he said it, so it must be true. And even Lord Buddha, and you can question whether it's figurative or literal, said, I'm going to give you 3 steps for testing something to be true. Don't just take my word for it. You need to prove it to yourself. And if you can't, then don't take what I said to be true. Pretty cool, huh? It's one of the most attractive things I find in Buddhism. You don't have to follow some dogma. Something someone said 2,500 years ago, just because they said it. The founder, he gets up in front of all of these people in the world and says, you can't believe everything I say. If you can't confirm it, if you can't find that it's logical, using these 3 tests and your logic, don't accept it. Don't do it. Pretty cool, huh? If you're like me, you're here because whatever philosophies or religions or beliefs that you were brought up with, you applied certain tests to them and logic to them. You questioned them. And you found something lacking in them. So you're already a practitioner of Zhangmei. You just didn't take the authority of someone who said it is like that and then accept it as truth. Whether it be our parents, our teachers, our priests, rabbis, imams, we questioned it. And here we're in a philosophy where the founder says, hey, that's cool. Keep testing. Don't just believe what I say. So when examining some idea or philosophy, authoritative word, scripture, teaching, opinion, etc., put these 3 tests to it. There are these 3 tests, and if they don't hold up under them, throw that idea out. So these tests are called, say, JEPA, SUM. JEPA, SUM. SUM is 3. Easy word to remember. And JEPA is tests. So the 3 tests. The first one is melted. So what do we mean by that? Well, in the olden days, before we had credit cards and dollar and bills and things, they had gold and silver and animals or whatever it was that people traded to exchange what they needed. So here we're talking about a piece of metal. You get even a piece of metal now, you don't know how pure it is. Maybe it's just gold plated and there's something underneath it. So you don't know if it's pure. There's no standard. And you have to figure out if it's gold or not. Because if it ain't gold, it's going to be useless, right? So we all need to know, or back then especially, how to check if it's gold. So what do? The first thing you can do is to melt it, right? And when you melt it, you can see if there's lead inside it, right? Because it melts down into its different substances. So you check to see if there is lead inside it. The second one is to cut it, and we'll talk about that more. And the third one is to rub it. So Lord Buddha says, use these 3 tests on what I teach you. They don't pass the test, don't follow it. Basically, he says other places, put it on the shelf, pull it down, test it again. And Buddha gets up and he gives a teaching on this first test. So you melt it, you put it in the fire. What does that mean for us? It means, does it match my personal experience? Does it match my semas, my logical perceptions? The classical example is in the books, is an example about suffering. If every event is connected to our suffering, what does it mean to be alive if we can't do something about it? Why even be here if it's obvious that nothing we ever do works forever, including ourselves? Doesn't make sense that people should die and suffer if there is someone who made them and was compassionate. Why would someone do that? Do you check it out logically? Does this pass what I'm seeing in my own life? Compare it to your own direct, accurate perceptions, experiences. Does it make sense? So the second one, che, to cut it. Like in the book Vajra Chetaka. Anybody know what Vajra Chetaka is? Please unmute yourself and say.
It's a diamond cutter.
Which part is the che?
Che is the cutter.
And which is the diamond?
Vajra.
The Vajra, right. Thank you, David. So here we have the same che, the diamond cutter, to cut through things, right? With the gold, you cut it to see what is in it. With a philosophy, with an idea, with something someone says to us, and you're like, especially your teachers, are they being figurative or are they being literal? Right? Does it fit my deductive, accurate, logical perceptions? There are some things we can't see, but we can figure them out with our intellect. Like, there are things in outer space that we can't see, but scientists have ideas of what is out there. And then they build things like the James Webb Telescope to try and see them. We can figure them out with our intellect. So, do the things that I figured out intellectually with my logic through deduction match what Lord Buddha said? Like, I haven't seen my death yet, unless you've seen emptiness directly and you had that, realize you had that perception. I haven't perceived the loss of all of my possessions yet. But based on what I see around me and what I have heard that happens to everyone else in this realm, can I deduce that I'm going the same way? Lord Buddha says, you yourself are going to die. You're going to lose all of your possessions, everything you have. Can we see it directly now? No. Does it make sense? Based on my deduction, do I know that it's true? Does it make sense to do the death meditation? Logically, I know it's going to happen. There is going to be a day when I shed this body, which I still think of as me. So to cut it means it not only fits my own experience of it, my direct experience, the sec, it also fits my deduction of what is going to happen. Even with the things that I don't understand, like emptiness, it makes sense. And the third one is you rub it, you file it. And the Tibetan word for this is dar. So with gold, you use a certain kind of file, and they still use it. And it tells you how many carats it is. That's the measure of how pure the gold is. So we call it a touchstone. And it's a hard, this file, it's a hard black stone to test the purity of gold and silver. And according to the color of the streak that's left when the metal was rubbed against it, it tells you how pure it is. So we're asking the question here about, is it authoritative? Somebody gets up, they say something, and you're like, I'm not so sure about that. You've known this person for long enough that, you trust what they say, you know them well enough that you know they have not lied to you, that they are telling you the truth because that's what they do. And so they're telling you the truth on the subject of something that you can't see directly. And you believe them because you trust the source. You can't check it out for yourself. But logically, every other time they have said something and you have checked it out, you have known them to tell the truth. And so you believe them. So even though you can't see it yourself, you can accept another person's authority. You can establish their validity and what they say through logic. Like they have taught me and told me countless things which were true. So you can rely on someone who you can trust. This is the third test. As children, we relied on our parents. We trusted them. And they helped us to be able to, because we had the trust in them, to be able to use our intellect and listen and test things. And test what they said, which of course we all did when we were teenagers, and our teachers. And we use that skill here. So in Buddhism, you can figure out that what the Buddha said was credible. Once you have established that the scripture that he spoke was true or not. Is it important to check it out or not? So how do we test if Lord Buddha is to be believed? Tibetans will tell you that Lord Buddha is a Sema. What's a Sema? It's a pramana. What's a pramana? Do you remember?
A valid perception.
A valid perception, exactly. Yeah. In this case, it's referring to someone who cannot lie. It's referring to a seme kebu. Someone who cannot lie. So how do you establish that? One way, one way is to study a lot of Buddhist scripture. And if it was spoken by Lord Buddha and every one of them you have read that he spoke is credible, believable, then you can believe this one. That's one way to do that. In the scriptures, they say the best way to establish Lord Buddha as being credible is that he has described suffering correctly. Do any other of the world religions or philosophies describe suffering? In my world, at least, he's the only person I've ever run into who has described to me how much suffering I experience. In the first Arya truth, he said, everything's suffering. Just about everybody else will tell you, you know, it's 50% suffering, or it's 10% suffering. But only Lord Buddha told us that it is all suffering. Even the face of a beautiful child, even to be healthy, even to be young. Why? Doesn't last. The seeds wear out. And this is the only way to logically establish that Lord Buddha is semi-capable, is credible. Why is it that everything I ever love will end? Because it began. So what ruins your life is your birth. Because on the other end, there's death. Why did my marriage end? Because it started. Anything that starts ends. And someone who can describe the condition of life here in this world, in this samsaric, deceptive world, so clearly, that is someone who I can believe. But how can I trust him if he contradicts himself? If someone gives compelling reasons that they say what they do to help people, then it is a good reason. Test it with the 3 to see it. On things which are cochlear, hidden reality, go straight to number 2. Does it fit my deductive, accurate, logical perception? It is important to use number 1 to see if the way they explain it is apparent to you. Use direct personal experience to come up with, okay, no objections so far. Is there anything which would discount emptiness with your direct personal experience? Maybe I can't confirm it just now, but you know what? I can't not confirm it either. This is true, you know, of proving future lives. You have to use logic and not be lazy about it, not have lazy doubt. So why might Lord Buddha teach something that we, with our Madhyamika Prasangika hats, say is wrong? Why did Lord Buddha teach the various philosophical schools of ancient India? For the very reason that those beliefs are helpful in bringing people of different capacities and personalities further along the path. Many beliefs of the mind-only school, although from our Madhyamika Prasangika hat, are technically incorrect. They help get us thinking clearly about emptiness and the idea of the world and its inhabitants being projections from our own minds. So why study trauma? Think about it. Some philosophical schools say, it's not necessary to study emptiness. Just meditate. So think about that while we have our 6-minute break. And I'll meet you back here to carry on at 10 minutes after the hour. So have a good stretch, get something to drink, and see you back here soon.
Да, дорогая.
Anna? Anna, Anna, can you read this for us?
Oh, yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sutra requested by the realized being Rashtrapala. Different beings must wander here because they have no knowledge of the way of emptiness, of peace, and of things that never began. Those with compassion use skillful means and millions of different means to bring them into it.
Thank you. So
Thank you.
Jason Kappa quotes this sutra. It's in your reading, the sutra requested by Rashtapala, Arya Rashtapala. And Shakyamuni Buddha is saying here, so Rashtapala asked for it, and this is the teaching Lord Buddha gave, right? And he's saying by implication that you must study emptiness, and the Buddhas will guide you. So it's this whole subject of, say, tapsul, skillful means. It's using thousands of different approaches in getting us to understand emptiness. So we might see somebody do something or say something that doesn't look correct for us, to us. Are we omniscient? Do we know why they're saying it? Do we know why they're doing it? Is it figurative? Is it literal? Could it help somebody? I know personally, when I first began learning about emptiness, and I saw what some very famous other teachers were teaching, it was like, but they're not teaching the whole thing. How come they're not, they're only teaching lower middle way or mind only? How come they're not teaching the ultimate way? And I was very critical because it was like, they're not telling the whole story. Come on, let's tell the whole story. As I got a little more mature, though, I realized not everybody's ready for the whole story yet. Take, for example, my mother. My mother, she was what we call bipolar. She had mental problems in processing things and had suffered a lot in her life. And if I had told her, I talked about seeds, but I never talked about seeds in the ultimate way that she was creating her own suffering, because she wouldn't have been able to handle it at that time. She wasn't ready to hear it. It would have put her into a deep depression and caused more suffering. Okay? So the enlightened beings, our teachers, use thousands of different ways to help us, to bring us, I like to think of it as a ladder, to bring it up each rung of the ladder. So we start with a strong foundation. So we start with a pen because everybody can relate to it. Right? Then we bring people up. So that's why we say this most important class distinguishing between what is literal and what is figurative to the end, because you have all those other courses, we would say, under your belt, right? They're your foundation. So why is it important to distinguish between literal and figurative? We've been talking about it. There are 4 great Indian philosophical schools. They're not the Tibetan Buddhist schools, they're philosophical schools. We have the detailists or the Abhidharma, which is, or Vaibhashika. It's the higher knowledge. Then it gets a little more subtle, and we have the logic schools, the Sautantrika, the Sutrists. And then we have the mind only, the Chittamatra. And then we have middle way, which is the Madhyamika, and it's divided up into Svatantrika, the lower middle way, and Prasangika, which is the higher middle way. The detailists and the sutrists are Hinayana, mind only, and middle way are Mahayana. What do those terms mean? They relate to the depth, I guess you could say, of their understanding of seeds and emptiness. So when we're talking Hinayana here, we're not talking about bodhicitta motivation or the system of a particular place like Thailand or Sri Lanka. We're talking about the difference between how these 4 schools explain emptiness. Detailists talk about how things lack a nature of stability. Things are changing. That's a great start, right? Okay, things are changing. I can get that. Then the sutrists, the logic schools, they talk about a lack of substantiality to things, the substance, the lack of something, of a substance of things. And we can think that about that as like there's no director, rather that things occur because of the goodness that we've done in the past. Then the mind only in the middle way talk about how nothing exists on its own, and they talk about it in different degrees. Every being has a different understanding. If we apply these 3 to ourselves, the detailists, the sutrists, and then we're lumping together the mind only and the middle way. If you apply these 3 ourselves to the teachings, it will help you to learn. It's all to improve our understanding of emptiness ultimately. How to purify our view, and also how to help others. So we can see where we are in the past, like we can follow it. How do I interpret the teachings that I receive? As a philosopher, as a meditator, under a mental affliction attack, right? The whole point of practice is how quickly can we apply our worldview to any situation. within the day, within the hour, within the minute, even as it arrives. Another reason, so we can gauge where others are. What is their worldview? When you're talking with others and you understand Chongne, you can realize where their thinking is at. Then you can meet them where they are. And from there, you can guide them to a deeper understanding. And then 3, so we can understand how to take what the lamas teach us. Should you believe everything they say? Is it absolute truth? If we understand Chongne, we won't be confused and take as literal what is intended as figurative. Now, is it easy to figure that out? No. I remember before Diamond Mountain started, or before Diamond Mountain University started, I had produced all of the Quiet Retreat teachings. And I was deeply involved in producing Diamond Mountain University and the first opening that we had and all of that. And then once DMU started, all of a sudden, Geshe Michael gave my job to somebody else. My job, my personally assigned job, right? And I was like, do I say something? Do I object and say, wait a minute, I was doing this? Or do I use it for something else? Do I take it figuratively or do I take it literally? Right? Is there a right and is there a wrong? You got to cook it. So by understanding well the mind-only system, by trying to understand where our teachers are trying to take us, it gets us closer to the ultimate understanding. So how do we apply this principle? If the Buddha didn't always speak literally when it was helpful to students, we must be very careful in judging those around us. They could be, just maybe, angels trying to teach us something not technically correct, but will help our understanding of emptiness or another student's understanding of emptiness. So that's also a very important point, which is you might hear a teacher tells one student something and tell you something else. Okay? Every student is different. Each person needs something different. And they might seem totally contradictory. So, but what did Lord Buddha mean when he said nothing has any nature of its own? When he was answering this, the Bodhisattva, Dundamyandak Pak, who basically said, you know, in the Heart Sutra, you said nothing has its own nature and nothing has characteristics. So, what is meant by no self-nature? And how is it that nothing has any self-nature? No ni nepa. Say no, ni mepa. It doesn't have its own nature. You said seni ni mepa. Seni mepa, sorry. It doesn't have its own characteristics. The Buddhist said, when I taught Heart Sutra and said nothing has a nature of its own and nothing has characteristics, I meant these three ways of lacking self-nature. 1, seni no mepa. It lacks any definitive nature of its own. When the Bodhisattva heard this, he got chills up his spine. And then he went away and got enlightened. For the rest of us, we had to wait for Arya Sangha, Arya Nagarjuna, Lama Tsongkhapa, Geshe Thupten Rinchen, who taught this to Geshe Michael and Geshe Michael, right? We're at the back of the class, you know? We were probably there and just didn't get it. You know, we're still back on not trying to figure out, are things changing or unchanging? Right? So if you say fire is hot by definition, it doesn't mean that the definition of fire is to be hot. It means that the very nature of fire is to be hot. Or that a pen has the very nature of writing from its own side. And this phrase refers to the first of the 3 attributes, kuntats. We're in mind-only school. 2, nothing grows through a nature of its own. This refers to things that grow or depend on other things. And we can state that in 2 ways. We can state it positively and negatively. Anything that grows must have a nature of growing from its own causes and conditions. Remember, we've got the mind-only hat on, okay? We took the prasangika hat off, the madhyamika hat off. Negatively, nothing has a nature of growing without its causes and conditions. The best example is the suffering in our lives. It has causes which we can figure out and stop. Negatively, nothing bad that happens to you just happens by itself without specific causes. And this refers to the second of the 3 attributes, Shen Wangs. We're going to get into them more, so just hold on. Don't worry. And don't forget, this is a review. And number 3, Dundampa no ni mepa. Nothing has a nature of being ultimate. This is totality. Yongjus. And it has 2 meanings. Constructs. Things that we put together are not ultimate because they are just imaginary things. We're constructing them. They don't have any existence from their side. Dependent things are not ultimate. Because when you are perceiving ultimate reality directly, you are not perceiving a changing thing. You are perceiving emptiness, which is unchanging. And emptiness is just the absence of a self-existent thing. A changing thing isn't ultimate because it is changing and comes from other causes. So this is the third of the three attributes, Yongju. So why did the Bodhisattva get chills? All existing things can fit into one of these three categories. So let's take kuntaks, constructs, mental images, right? These three attributes are the cornerstone of the mind-only school. And they relate to three ways of lacking a self-nature. Construct, mental image, whatever you labeled nature, whatever you want to call it, it's something put together. It's how our mind perceives something. It's not part of your mind or your mind imagining something. It's the object that the imagining is focused on. It's the label your mind applies to an object. In mind only, Chittamatra, the label is what you see, not the object. You never see the object. And it has the attribute of being established through names and terms. If we state it negatively, this thing does not exist by definition. Positively, this thing is established by names and terms. It's an unchanging thing. Want an example? Democracy. When you stop thinking about it, when your mind shifts, it goes out of existence. It's a construct. A construct can apply to something that either does exist or something that doesn't exist, like rabbit's horns or flower that could grow in midair without any water or soil. Right? The classical example, if I remember correctly, for something that does exist is our boy Tashi. So a family, they have a little baby born, a little boy, and several days after the baby's born, they decide to name it Tashi. And from then on, they think of the baby boy as our boy Tashi, in quotes. It's a construct. We have to distinguish between three things here. This blob of flesh, for better example, is the object out there. The parents' minds, though, are thinking of the boy in a certain way. Their constructing minds are applying names. Oh, let's call him Tashi. Let's call him David. With the thoughts that he's our little baby, right? The construct 3, that's our boy, Tashi, which rests between the little baby and the parents' minds. So we have to distinguish these 3 things. I know you're getting a lot of information. You're probably already full, but please just hang in there. We're going out with a bang. The last 2 classes of ACI 18. And then there's Shenwangs. Changing things, dependent things, other powered things. Wang means power. Shen is other. A Shen Yule is another person or another thing. So the thing that lacks any nature of growing without causes and conditions. So it comes together based on causes and conditions, things coming together, not self-existently. It arises in dependence on other things. It's not self-arising, the changing nature that things have. So anything that grows comes from causes and conditions. Nothing that grows doesn't. Of the things that change, none change on their own. For example, our aging and death are at the mercy of our ignorance. That is the meaning of the link number 1 on the wheel of life. So Shenwangs are dependent things, are changing and cause things, but they don't have a nature of growing by themselves. They can only grow from other causes. Our perceiving mind is also a dependent thing. But the constructs our mind perceives are unchanging things. And number 3, Yongdrups. Drup means existence. Yong means total. So totality. Everything exists. This is the simple lack of a non-existent self-nature. That is the mind-only school's understanding of emptiness. Why is it called totality? Geshe Thupten Rinchen, amazing teacher, he said, the minute it comes out, the minute something exists, its emptiness exists with it. We can also think about every object has its own emptiness, meaning emptiness covers the totality of all things. So these 3 are very important in the mind-only school. Kuntats, Shenwangs, and Yongdrups. Nothing has a nature of being ultimate, means 2 things in the mind-only school. Kuntak's constructs aren't ultimate because they're created by our mind. Shenwangs, changing things, aren't ultimate because they come together based on causes and conditions. When those causes and conditions change, it ceases to exist. Shenwangs and Yongdrups do exist by definition from their own side. For Shenwangs, the things exist independent of our thinking of them. If we were all to stop thinking about something, it would still exist. That's what a Shenwang is. If we all left the room and left our computers on, the Zoom call would still exist. That's what a Shenwang is. Yongju is the fact that the kunta, the mental construct, does not apply to the Shenwang by definition. Say it again. Yongju, which is totality, is the fact that the kunta, the mental construction, the thing that we're creating, does not apply to changing things, Shenwangs, by definition. There's no correct way to interpret anything. Yongdrups exist by definition because it's necessarily the case that the label does not apply to the changing thing by definition. It's always the case. It's true whether I realize it or not. Kuntams do not exist by definition. It does go away when we stop thinking about it, when we stop imagining it. It's not there. And Lord Buddha says, that's what I meant when I said nothing has a nature of its own. You gotta cook it. It's a lot of stuff. And I highly recommend coming to Word Smith's class. He is a master of mind-only school. And getting his book from Diamond Cutter Classics, Diamond Cutter Press, on the mind only. So, an example of a kuntak, a construct, is like this flower in space, a sky flower, a flower that grows in the air. It's an imaginary thing. It doesn't exist by definition, uniquely from its own side. Can we imagine it? Yeah, but it doesn't exist. And it doesn't exist by definition from its own side. Shenwangs are dependent things, and they're like an illusion, like a magic show. It doesn't appear to us that a pen and our perception of a pen are the same substance. It appears to come from a separate karmic seed. The pen and our perception, they seem to come from different karmic seeds. We think it's out there, but the object and the sense consciousness, the eye perceiving it, they come from the same karmic seed. Yongjus, totality. It is like empty space. It's a simple lack of physical matter in the sense of being the simple lack of a non-existent self-nature. It means that the minute an object exists, it is 100% empty. And that's why it's called totality. In the mind-only school, every existing thing has these three attributes. So that's an overview. It's a thick book overview, a commentary on a commentary of these three attributes and what they mean by self-existence, self-nature in the mind-only school. Tomorrow we'll go into the Madhyamika and what they mean. But in the meantime, I'm going to share with you the three turnings of the wheel when these were taught. So the first turning of the wheel is called the turning of the wheel of the four Arya truths, or the four truths. Denshi Chimkor. Where did Lord Buddha teach it? He taught it at a place called Sarnath, and it's near Varanasi. This is a picture of Varanasi. This is a picture of Sarnath, which I haven't done a lot of Buddhist pilgrimage, but this is one place that I have had the great fortune to go to. And there he taught to disciples of the lower way. The basic subject he taught was the four Arya truths, or the four realized truths. And he said there, every existing thing exists by definition. The second turning of the wheel, it's called the turning of the wheel on how nothing exists by definition. He just said, right? Let's go back. He said, every existing thing exists by definition. In the second turning, it's known as how nothing exists by definition. Seni mepa chungkor. Chungkor is the wheel. Kor, korwa, kor is the wheel. It was taught on Rajgira, Jagupungpoiri, and here is a picture of Rajgira. And what did he teach there? He taught to those of the greater way. And its basic subject matter is emptiness. And as we said, the view is no existing thing exists by definition. The third turning of the wheel, which we've already heard about today, is the turning of the wheel of fine distinctions. And it was at a place called Vaishali, Yangpachen. Here's a picture of Vaishali, what it looks like now. You can see that it must have been an incredible place at the time of Lord Buddha teaching. And he taught that to disciples of all ways, the Tekpa Tamche. And the basic subject matter are the three attributes that we talked about, just talked about, right? And there he said, some things exist by definition and some do not. And we must make fine distinctions between them. So which of the three turnings does the mind-only school think is figurative and which is literal? They say the first two are figurative and the last one is literal. Because it is neither true that all things exist by definition, nor that nothing exists by definition. Some are one and some are the other. The only literal teaching is the one, the third turning of the wheel, right? Where Lord Buddha made these distinctions. The mind-only school does believe in external objects and doesn't believe that the pen is coming only from your mind. The mind-only school says that things exist from their own side with some unique identity of their own. Now, isn't that the way we think of it? Aren't we really, I don't know, mind-onlyers? That there's some self-existence to this pen, that it's not just coming from my seed? And this statement mainly refers to the fact that because the pen exists as a dependent object, that is produced by causes that exist externally, then the external object that they produce must also exist out there and is not merely a nominal thing. If the pen is something that you are only projecting with your mental constructs, then you don't need a pen factory. And you don't need petroleum to make the plastic to have a pen. So far in my reality, it is not the case, right? And it's not the case to the mind-only school. External causes are producing the pen. If we take off our mind-only school hat and put on our Madhyamika Prasangika hat, and what is my hand doing up? Then we would say we are also being forced to see that we need a pen factory and petroleum to have a pen by our seeds. So which of the three turnings does the Madhyamika Prasangika school think is figurative and which is literal? With our Madhyamika Prasangika hat, we would say the first and the last are not to be taken on face value. They are figurative. Right? Because, and the middle one is the ultimate way. The middle one is the literal teaching. Because it is true that nothing exists by definition. That's what it says in the middle one. And it's not true that everything exists by definition, which was stated in the first, or that some things do and some things do not exist by definition, stated in the last, the third turning. Right? It's the middle one. And remember that in the Madhyamika Prasangika school, literal means any teaching in which Lord Buddha refers clearly to emptiness. And figurative means any teaching in which he did not. Keep that in mind. So what then would designate which school a person of the Hinayana or Mahayana belongs to? It would be their personal understanding or view on emptiness. And which school explains that understanding the best? So look at where your understanding, in reality, what you're understanding, how you use emptiness in your life. Are we at lower school? 2 schools, the Abhidharma and the Sutras? Or are we in mind only or Majjhimika? If you're like me, you fluctuate through all of those philosophical schools every day, depending on how you are perceiving your world and how you are reacting to it. Like, I got really annoyed with somebody the other day. I asked them to do something and they were like, And I totally forgot at that moment that they were coming from me. It was like, they never listened to me and they no. What school was I in there, I didn't even think about, it coming from one seed, that they have some self-existence out there. That's what mind only is saying, and I am perceiving them in a certain way. No, they were totally out there. None of it was coming from my perception until a moment later was like, oh, okay, right? So we fluctuate. So be careful. Don't judge others. Don't even have to judge yourself. Just recognize where you are and where your mind is thinking and where you could tweak it and change it to a deeper understanding of where your world is coming from. And so we're at the end of class, your meditation assignment, examining the concepts of Buddhism or actions of lamas, and etc., which you have trouble with, and decide whether they are to be taken literally or figuratively. Maybe they have some benefit. Maybe there is some benefit in the lower schools versions of selflessness and emptiness. Check it out. So I hope you're not too overwhelmed with our last big logic class. Well, no, we have one more tomorrow. Right. It's a lot. And again, to remind you, it's a review. Please take these courses if you haven't taken them so you can go more deeply. Think about your questions. And I think, maybe we'll do, I don't know what we're going to do next week. I don't know what you guys decided. I have a feeling it's going to be maybe question and answer and a bit of review, kind of a combination of the two. That's kind of what I'm feeling. Anyway, and if you want to go deeper into these ideas, please, Gina, would you share Shuang Sen's tower for us? Thank you. The mixed nuts are now going to a new format. Instead of having 2 grueling weeks of 5 hours a day of studying the ancient books, we're going to be doing it 2 days a week from now until whenever, right? And the first class starts on Monday. And we'll have classes on Monday, which is Tuesday morning in Asia, and then on Saturday morning, which will reach Europe more easily. So please come. It will kind of be like this class. You won't understand most of what was said. And don't worry about it. It plants seeds. It plants these amazing seeds that continue to cook and ripen. So please come. It starts on Monday, this Monday, and I hope to see you there. And we'll be going into the mind-only school and many other schools. And if you can make it, I really encourage you to do that. So with that, I will see you all mañana, tomorrow. And just take a little bite of what we talked about today and play with it. Think about it. Do coffee meditation on it, contemplate it, and don't be overwhelmed by it.
Thank you so much, Venerable Gyelse.
Thank
You
you.
You served us a really good meal, and now we have to digest.
I think there were a lot of maybe too many courses, right? And tomorrow will be dessert, which I think will have many desserts. So yeah, we do need to digest it. It's a lot. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you so much. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah. Take care. Have a good rest of your day, evening, whatever it is. Bye-bye.